everybody, this is Off Leash with Erik Prince. I'm Mark Serrano. We've got an action-packed episode for you today. We've got to catch up on a lot of news. The Houthis are on fire. Ukraine is struggling to find a peace path. And the border, my God, what Joe Biden's doing with the border now. Wait till you hear it from Erik Prince himself. I'm Mark Serrano. Time to dive in. Erik, the Houthis are expanding their reach. Tell us about it.
Well, it started with them first attacking ships just off the Bab el-Mandab, the narrow waterway in the Red Sea. And then they started hitting ships out in the Indian Ocean. And the last week of May, they actually hit an oil tanker in the Mediterranean. You can see Yemen here at the bottom. From their area of Hodeidah on the west coast there, they hit a ship, moving ship in the Mediterranean, 1,400 miles away. Because they said they're imposing an embargo on any ship that's trying to visit an Israeli port. They hit it with a ballistic missile, which is impressive that the Iranians have they've provided them that level of capability. And so this, whatever effort the U.S. Navy and the other coalition was doing is clearly been a fail. Egypt continues to lose $800 million a month in lost Suez Canal fees, and the ragtag militia, armed and enabled by Iranian RGC officers, has upped their game. So they said, we're going to attack in 3 seas, and they did. First time they hit in the Mediterranean, it was a ship called the Essex. They hit in the Red Sea, and now out in the Indian Ocean as well. So it's ridiculous. It is a problem that is compounding, and it's not getting any better. And even if the maximum ceasefire peace deal was reached in Gaza, you still have a way over-empowered Houthi gang extension of the Iranian regime that is truly allowed to run rampant and maraud against commerce.
All right, so you've instructed us in the past here on Off Leash about how the Houthis are sort of conducting these attacks, that they are by and large all land-based out of Yemen. So that's an extraordinary new level of provocation from the Houthis.
They went from pirates, right? Because their first move was to fly a helicopter out and land it, and did a visit board search and seizure of a car carrier driving by. Those poor guys are still held hostage in the port of Hodeidah. It's not even an Israeli crew. It's Indians, Filipinos, and right. Danish. Right. And now they've really gone long range with cruise missiles, long range drones, and now even with a ballistic missile that hit a target 1,400 miles away in the Mediterranean Sea. So
you raise a fascinating point, because in the unlikely event that we see a ceasefire in Gaza, this is Iran basically saying, sure, go for your ceasefire all you want, but we're still going to raise hell and cause havoc throughout the region.
So now Iran controls this major waterway. They can shut off the Straits of Hormuz like that if they wanted to. And I would argue that they could even shut off the Straits of Gibraltar by some of the ships that they've modified as special operations support targeting vessels. They can actually put box-mounted cruise missiles and drones on that vessel and attack commerce, even coming into the Western Mediterranean.
Sure, I was going to say, the marine commerce here, as you've told us in the past, because they've been able to shut down about 85% of traffic through the Red Sea.
More like 98%.
98% now. They've had to go around the Horn of Africa instead, tremendous extra time and cost. So now, if we've got threats in the Mediterranean, what does that mean for commerce on the waters?
All the ports in southern Europe are significantly down in volume because of the ships not coming through the Red Sea. So price inflation, supply chain disruptions, all happening all across Europe because of that.
What does it say about their intelligence capability that they were able to target the Essex, which was, I presume, bringing supplies to Israel?
It was carrying petroleum products.
Okay. What does that say about their intel capability?
It means they have another vessel cruising around the Mediterranean, and I'm shocked that it hasn't been sent to the bottom already. It is a collapse of credibility and deterrence, and that they're allowed to run off leash and marauding against normal commerce, against hurting Egypt, fellow Muslim nation, is truly unacceptable.
Where the hell does this go? I mean, this really. I mean, I'm sort of startled at the their level of aggression here, that they would take that risk. Where does this go from here?
The Iranians are stimulating the Houthis and giving them some very, very high-end capability, and the Houthis are feeling full of themselves, and someone needs to put them back in their place.
I'm dumbfounded that the Biden administration has not crafted some sort of strategy that we would allow virtually all traffic to be blocked through the Red Sea. Is extraordinary.
It comes back to the Pentagon lacking any kind of nuance. Think about how the Pentagon wanted to respond after 9/11, 23 years ago. They wanted to wait 6 months and do a mechanized invasion of Afghanistan via Pakistan with a 45,000-man unit, instead of embracing a special operations, unconventional warfare capability of supercharging the Sunni tribes, the natural enemy of the Houthis, giving them some special operations capabilities with a little bit of air, and put them in a very defensive position immediately. But the Pentagon cannot think that way, and I think the agency has backed away from doing that kind of mission. So it's, as we're around the anniversary of D-Day and what a few picked men and women did in the special operations world to kneecap Hitler's Nazi army response capability in northern France was extraordinary. What a few picked people that are brave and willing and able to do it. The same can be applied in Yemen to solve a major problem for the rest of the commercial maritime world. But no, there's just very blockaded thinking in the Pentagon.
But I can't imagine that there aren't world leaders calling, Joe Biden in alarm to say, damn it, you've got to do something about this.
I can tell you that in the Middle East and in Europe, there is it's not just fatigue, it is full-on exhaustion of the failure of the Biden administration and the collapse of American credibility. They want America to lead and to be strong and to be credible and to be capable. And we just have not. We have absolutely shirked from any kind of role there. Look, Gaza obviously is a war for Israel to execute and for them to conduct that campaign. We can stay out of their way. We can supply them as we have historically, but it's their war to conduct. This Red Sea conflict that Iran has basically created through the Houthis is ours and everybody else in the world. If the whole premise, the reason we have a blue water global navy with 400 and some military bases around the world is to ensure freedom of navigation, and that clearly we've allowed a bunch of dudes in flip-flops with some high-end weapons provided by the Iranians to literally shut off one of the world's major waterways. And so it's an absolute fail of the Navy, and it's a fail of the Pentagon leadership of adapting an innovative solution to smash the Houthis, because I'm sure, I can only imagine what the joint staff comes forward with to say, well, yes, we need $100 billion to do a campaign in Yemen, instead of saying, well, I think we could get it done for $500 million or less. Or, again, Egypt losing real dollars, $800 million every month just in loss of fees from ships not going through the Suez Canal.
Devastating their economy.
It's 40% of their GDP. That's why the Egyptian pound is devalued by almost half.
I'm stunned. I am stunned.
Unfortunately, Mark, I'm not.
Right.
No, I'm just not. I see it's like a multi-car NASCAR crash that you can see unfolding in front of your eyes.
Yeah.
And unless there is very different leadership that will make bold and decisive actions, the hits are going to keep on coming.
Right. No, bad enough that the Red Sea has been blockaded like this, but for them to now attack in the Mediterranean, that's what's just bold and brazen, and they've got to be,
It's a brave new world of precision weapon threats against commerce. The freedom of the seas that we appreciated, took for granted even 5 years ago, those days are gone.
This is startling. As bad as things are, they're only going to get worse, and it's going to be a hell of a summer. But we've got a lot more to unpack in this update around the world. Let's go to Ukraine and let's talk what's happening there. There is a peace conference, so-called peace summit, that is going to be taking place in June in Singapore. Last year, Ukraine and Russia both had a presence there. This year, Russia's taking a pass. Zelensky is, trying to rally support behind his efforts to force Russia to basically abdicate their control over 20% of Ukrainian territory, trying to use this peace summit to leverage other countries' support to force Russia in that direction. Whereas China, according to the Wall Street Journal, is helping Russia undermine this peace summit. China is basically telling countries, stay away from it. Tell me about this dynamic now with China and Russia in the Ukraine conflict.
This all comes back to, I would say, military victories drive diplomatic breakthroughs. The fact is, Russia is winning right now. They are grinding like a rototiller up the Ukrainian positions. Ukraine is severely manpower limited. If you go to Kiev right now, it's a ghost town because the forced conscription, if they see any male of any kind of military age, they are grabbing him forcibly off the street and sending him to the front. That's how desperate it is. So Ukrainian forces are on a precipice. On top of that, Zelensky has lost his legal mandate because his presidential administration ran out in May. And so now, because he declared some kind of martial law, no election. Yep. So I don't think Putin views him as a legitimate negotiating partner anyway. He couldn't sign any kind of armistice because he has exceeded any kind of mandate of the Ukrainian people to actually rule. Putin is actually very legalistic about the kind of laws and procedures. And so I don't see this ending well for the Ukrainians. They should have made a deal a long time ago to freeze the lines, to have kind of a North-South Korea armistice, to focus on making babies, restoring their demographics, and trying to grow their economy. And instead, they're going to be ground up into oblivion. Because again, as the fields dry, now it's June, as the fields dry, it's much more conducive for tank and maneuver warfare, and exceedingly dangerous for a Ukrainian force that is dangerously weakened already.
Let me run a couple quotes by you on this story from the Wall Street Journal. Ironically, it's called the Shangri-La Dialogue, this peace summit, so-called peace summit.
It's probably held at the Shangri-La Hotel in Singapore. It's actually nice. It's a classic old hotel.
Right. All right. From Zelensky on Sunday in Singapore. Using Chinese influence, using Chinese diplomats, Russia is doing everything to disrupt the summit. Regrettably, such a big independent country as China has become an instrument in Putin's hands. Is Zelensky right?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter on any of that. What matters is Ukraine is losing badly on the edge of battle. That's the only thing that matters. Diplomats running their mouths in foreign capitals to have feel-good peace summits,
right?
It's nonsense. What matters is the Ukrainian army is getting ground up like a rototiller, and that's what's the awful reality being fed to those guys.
Russia
right now.
Attended the peace conference a year ago. There were talks between Russia and Ukraine there. What good did it do?
There's no reason.
We're a year later.
There's no reason for them to attend now because they're winning. They will dictate terms of the victory. The Russians want Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporozhia, and Kherson. Those are the four areas, and I believe they want to have some kind of a plebiscite. They want to govern that area and then have a plebiscite, agree to a plebiscite like 20 years in the future of whether they stay with Russia or whether they go to Ukraine. I think that's what they've been offering. Crimea, of course, is theirs without negotiation.
For a decade now.
Yes, since 2014. Mm-hmm. I think Ukraine should take that deal because if they lose Odessa, their port, they become much less viable as a country because they have to have a port that they can get their agricultural or mining products to market by sea. And if they lose Odessa, they're in very, very big trouble.
You're basically saying it's sooner or later. They're going to have to accept terms along those
Just
lines.
stop killing each other and take the deal.
What are the odds of a deal happening before November 5th of this year?
My gut says that there'll be some kind of diplomatic breakthrough in August, right before the Democratic convention. And I think there'll be some kind of a prayer for peace or something that the Pope does on the back end of the Paris Olympics this summer. And
but
that's my quirky, semi-educated guess of how this thing resolves.
But the notion that there's a diplomatic breakthrough before the Democratic convention in August suggests that the Biden administration are implemental in achieving that diplomatic breakthrough.
I think they have to try to end this because they know it's not a winner domestically and it's costing us enormous amounts, and they have nothing to show for hundreds of billions of dollars because effectively the lines haven't moved that much since a year and a half ago.
So it's just politics. Basically, the only thing that's going to motivate the Biden administration to act
is politics.
Correct.
Politics and grift.
Clearly.
Yep.
But,
disgusting.
But shy of that, this deal is done one way or another for Zelensky.
It's going to be dictated at the end of a T-72 tank barrel. Yep.
Well, we've got another update that just, I don't know why I'm stunned today at these things, but I am. That let's go to the U.S. border with Mexico. And news from the New York Post that Biden has offered mass amnesty to migrants that is quietly terminating 350,000 asylum cases. Now, personally, I think it's a lot more than that. But someone comes into the U.S., they claim asylum, they go on this list and the court records, and they have to make a court appearance in the future. And the Biden administration just says, don't bother. Don't show. We don't care. Technically, someone whose asylum case has been terminated could be deported, technically. But that won't happen with any one of these 350,000
But they're just tearing
people.
up the paperwork. Yeah, I was just passing through Miami recently, and a law enforcement official recognized me, and we started talking, and he said, you wouldn't believe how bad it is. There are tens of thousands of people flown into Miami every day with no real paperwork that are just granted blanket admission in the United States with kind of phony documents that are made up. So it is clearly a concerted effort orchestrated from Washington to flood the zone of the United States with people that really don't belong here under any kind of rule of law or process that has been actually laid out and agreed to as the laws are supposed to be administered. So, yeah, when law enforcement is throwing up their hands in despair, saying it's literally the worst I've ever seen, and it's the laws are just being shredded, we're reaching the point of true lawlessness from the federal government.
It's kind of like the same dynamic with student loan forgiveness. Supreme Court says, no, you don't have the authority to do that. It's an executive branch. And yet he's done it for millions of students forgiving their debt to the federal government. This is similar in a way, I think.
It's just blanket, illegal, horrific action.
Yeah, it's just by fiat. He's determining
acting like a dictator outside of any kind of rule of law.
Right.
Don't let the Democrats ever say that they respect the rule of law when they're this flagrant in violating the basic precepts of our society.
Well, and like you said, these are people being flown around the United States with no documentation. So if you can get on a commercial flight in the United States without any real documentation, how difficult could it be to vote this November?
Sure.
Not at all.
Yep.
You can get a driver's license, you can vote.
Rules for me, but not for thee.
Right. And now I think that's what we're going to see in these swing states is, in fact, once the data finally come through someday, we'll see that the predominant number of flights for these folks coming through Miami and elsewhere is to the swing states.
It's exactly like an NGO operating in Haiti contacted me a few months ago asking me to schedule an aircraft to fly from Port-au-Prince to Managua every day, like a Boeing 737, so 230 passengers, paid for by NGOs to fly them to Nicaragua so they can start walking north up through Mexico to enter the United States, importing hundreds of Biden voters every day. it's lawless, it's wrong, and elections have consequences. This one must have consequences, or we're going to lose the republic.
And many of those folks you're talking about from hostile Arab countries coming through Venezuela.
Yeah, it's tens of thousands. Yes. The only bright spot that's occurred is something that the United States had nothing to do with, and that's the election of a right-of-center new president in Panama who is committed to close the Darien Gap, which is the only part of thick jungle where there's not a road in Panama where people come up from the south. Now, that doesn't stop them from landing in Nicaragua, like the Haitians are doing, to start walking north. It is pervasive. And just now in Mexico, a even more leftist president, Scheinbaum, a protege of AMLO, elected president of Mexico, and she's even more to the left. And so the fentanyl will keep on rolling. The massive human trafficking of the cartels will keep on rolling. And I think the other data you'll see soon, Mark, is that the actual data of fentanyl deaths, it's not 109,000. It's actually 3 to 4 times that amount of Americans that are dying every year from fentanyl being laced into illegal drugs and killing people outright.
And legal drugs. I mean, these are not just overdoses. These are poisonings.
Yeah.
These are people who were popping a pill that had no idea it was laced with fentanyl. And so you're saying now
the real number is 400,000 or 500,000.
Extraordinary. The leading cause of death for people in sort of the 20 to 40 age category. Look, I got to tell you, let's exit on this, Erik, because we've just seen the verdict come out on Donald Trump's case in Manhattan. No big surprise, 34 felonies, guilty in all counts. He's got sentencing July 11th, 4 days before the Republican convention.
Yep.
I am screaming and yelling to anybody who will listen, nominate him now, formalize it now. Don't wait around. Get on the phone with the RNC and get the deal done so he can be the formal nominee without heditating. I hate to say it, but people are all sorts of legal scholars are saying on TV, well, the odds of him being jailed are so limited, so minimal because he's a first-time offender and dot, 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 dot. I don't believe any of it. I think it's all bull. I think at a minimum he's going to have house arrest, if not jail time, starting July 11th. And this is just the lawlessness of this administration behind it. Colangelo came from the Department of Justice, went to the office.
The number 3 guy from DOJ resigns from there to go work for the New York prosecutor. Yeah, it's absolutely the fix. And
this is what we're dealing with. So to talk about the border and wiping away asylum cases, it's the same ethos, it's the same mindset and principle.
And I was just with a colleague who was talking about going to a DMV, a Department of Motor Vehicles, in rural Virginia, and it was flooded with Latinos, not American citizens, that were there picking up a driver's license. And so if you have a driver's license, they were taking the test. Clearly, they were not here legally. They acknowledged that they were not here legally. He was talking to them in Spanish. And they're there getting a driver's license. So if you get a driver's license, you can also register to vote. And this is in Virginia, a state run by Glenn Youngkin, a Republican governor. What the hell is going on?
Right. Well, that's why Trump says we got to make it too big to rig. We got to make the victory too big for them to be able to rig it, because they will find a way. And I think this is how they're doing it. They're flooding migrants, wiping away asylum cases, flooding migrants into the swing states. Just like they did with their voter turnout efforts in the
Michigan
2020 election.
And Georgia and
and Arizona,
North Carolina,
and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. Those are the places. Well, look, from the Houthis, things are raging hot now that they're able to shoot at vessels in the Mediterranean. We've got Ukraine, where they're losing, and China is playing a huge role in this thing, which blows my mind, but is not a surprise with the fecklessness of this administration. And now you've got them right in front of our eyes, wiping away asylum cases on the border. We are now going to hit summertime soon, and I just can't imagine the chaos that we're facing in the coming months. And on top of all that, wait till we see what that Democratic convention is like in August with the pro-Hamas terrorists.
Yeah, I thought it was particularly interesting to see the Hamas protesters collide with the Pride Parade.
Right. Well, they're in cahoots, even though The pride people don't realize you can get thrown off a building over there in some of these Arab countries.
Yep.
But look, this is a great wrap up. I think we're going to have to stay very tuned to these issues.
I have one suggestion for Europe, who's desperately wants to help Ukraine. They have a migration problem. Simple. Press gang all those illegal migrants, send them to Ukraine. There's your next generation of Ukrainian army.
Right. Those are the guys that should suit up.
Exactly.
Yeah. If Zelensky,
if they want to come and participate in Europe, fine. They can go participate in Europe's defense by taking a position in the Ukrainian army right now. That's the simplest export of all those illegals in Europe.
That's the best idea I've heard. All right. Look, you've got to go and check out unplugged.com/offleash, our sponsor. Check out the Unplugged phone. Supplies are available. If I order today, Eric, how quickly can I get my phone?
2 days.
2 days. Fantastic. You've got to check out unplugged.com/offleash to get yours today while supplies last. This has been an amazing roundup. You got to stay tuned with us here at Off Leash. I'm Mark Serrano. This is Off Leash with Erik Prince. Until next time.